Hello, YouTube! We're going to be learning how to do some character design stuff more. Also, first video that I'm recording after making parkour on YouTube. Thank you guys so much for the support and for growing me and all that fun stuff. I'm so happy. But yes, we are going to be watching a video by Pikat, who is an illustrator and fairly big actually in the Vtube content creation sphere, especially among artists. And they're going to tell us how I make character designs better. So these are going to be very important steps that a lot of artists, tend to overlook, and good ways in order to, bring your character design to the forefront, make it a little bit more visually interesting without being overloading. So I haven't watched this video. I haven't watched any of the videos on today's docket, but yeah. Anyway, let's get to watching. So, yeah.
A bunch of ideas, like this. I want to design a character. And let's also say we even already have a bunch of ideas, like this.
Okay. So, all these characters, really fun. They give you a different feeling for the character with every single one. The big nerdy tank, honestly, probably my favorite out of the bunch, but then we have our typical knight sort of characters. This one feels a little bit more like a paladin-y sort of knight. This one feels a little bit more like a bandit-y sort of knight. This one definitely feels more bandit mercenary sort of feel. You just look like a foot soldier, and you look like you're straight out of Final Fantasy. You just look like you're about to just, storm the battlefield and know nothing about what you're about to get into.
But there's a big problem with these, which is that, well, don't these look a little plain? A bit boring?
Debatable, but they do kind of look a little on the simple side. They don't look plain. They don't look boring, I don't think. And the main reason why is because the face. If we were to kind of blur out the face a little bit, then yeah, they would kind of look like generic character numbers 1, 3, and 4. But the armor design on this guy looks perfect. There's a lot of detail going on. The silhouettes are actually fairly great. You accidentally made some pretty banger characters when you were trying to make simple characters.
They don't look anything like the awesome designs we see in animation and games. So I'm going to show you the process I use to level up this design from this to this.
Which honestly just kind of feels like you took your sketch and you just refined it a bunch. Which honestly not a bad thing. And it looks really good. Took her from foot soldier to, an actual D&D sort of character, something that you would expect to see in Final Fantasy or a D&D game, something that somebody would actually pay money to get commissions of fancy art for. So I like it, and I really like what she did with the cowl bit. Very fancy. I like that.
Let's get started. When we last left off, I was trying to redesign my VTuber model as a character from League of Legends. So I ended up...
Okay, so if we're going for the League of Legends standpoint, yeah, she would probably not work too terribly well in League of Legends. All the others would. You probably wouldn't stand out too terribly much. You would stand out decently. You would stand out pretty well. You two would kind of fall back. You look a little better for it, but because of the hat piece, kind of that kind of removes your silhouette a little bit. I don't know.
With a whole set of thumbnails like this, and if you want to find out more about that, you can check out this video right here.
Maybe we'll watch that another time.
That said, these are all a bunch of different designs, and for context, I wanted to design a character that felt like they didn't really know what they were doing and didn't quite belong, and they weren't as heroic as the regular cast of League of Legends.
Oh my god, I need to start doing the YouTube thing, don't I? Yeah, if you guys want to watch me see that, make sure you like, share, and subscribe this one, and give me a bunch of likes. I don't know, 500 likes, we'll watch the other one. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. I'm memeing.
And the first question is probably going to be, how do I decide which of these thumbnails I want to take further? Now, it's important to remember that when it comes to character design, looking good is only one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
It also has to communicate what you want. Now, for instance, this...
Oh, hold on 1 second. It's okay, but we're back, everything's good. Okay. And what was happening?
one piece of the puzzle. It also has to communicate what you want. Now, for instance, this character over here, I think a lot of people would say looks quite cool.
Agreed. But does it actually show anything about the character?
However, the problem with this character is it doesn't quite communicate what I want to communicate about the character. I want the character to feel a little bit more uncertain, a little bit less powerful, more like a novice or someone just starting out. So in the end, I decided to go with this character right.
Honestly, very good choice. Very good choice. Either of these two probably would have worked the best in that sort of situation. But this one definitely looks like she's a little less bright-eyed, bushy-tail. This one looks like she has some form of confidence in herself. Maybe not a lot, but like, you're a level 1 adventurer. She's probably like a level 3 adventurer. She's going out into the world. She's already fought a few goblins. She's slain a few rats and that sort of stuff. This one literally threw on as much armor as possible and is like, I'm scared, guys.
Over here. But as you can see, this is still only a sketch. How can I go from this to something with a little bit more detail? So as usual, I like to start with a sketch. I keep things very loose and very fast at this phase because I'm trying to figure out the overall pose. Initially, I'm thinking that it might make sense to have the spear off to the side like this. But of course, I always like to have more than one idea. And I don't know about you, but personally, my first idea is never the one I go with. It's always good to try a few times. Now,
that's actually what a lot of artists recommend. Never go with your first idea because, like, your first idea is not going to be your most refined one. It's a good one to get onto paper because, you know, you got to get that thought out of your head. And then once you get that thought out of your head, that'll then tell your brain, okay, I like it, but we need to change some things. Because, like, what she said before, she wanted this character to look more like a novice, not confident, and kind of like meek. This design right here instantly has, like, the entire front opened up. The character is a lot more confident looking. Like, this looks like somebody who's been on an adventure multiple times. Yeah, you can see the idea, so now it's time to refine it. Whereas when we go over to this one, with the slight little turn of the head, looking away from the camera, your character instantly looks like they're more meek, a little less confident. It could make them look wistful, but that's also where the expressions start to come into play in order to, like, solidify directly what that is. And then having the hands closer to the chest, having the weapon in front of your body, that closes your body off and makes you like a smaller presence. Which means you're now you're now more of a novice looking character, somebody who is not sure about what they're about to do.
Now over here, as you can see, I'm trying to do something similar to what I did for my thumbnail right over here. I felt like this was actually a decently good pose.
Oh, for sure.
Because remember, poses can also communicate things about your character. And I had her holding this whole arm very close to her chest and gripping it with two hands to make her look a little bit more uncertain and defensive. And that,
yeah, that's what I said,
I think, kind of fit the vibe I was trying to go for. You might also notice that I tried to add a couple of things to the helmet because I still wanted the character to feel special, unique. Even though they were timid and shy, I still needed them to feel like a League of Legends character, so they still had to have a little bit of a main character feeling to them, so...
Yeah, of course. And also, it's good to, like, have a little bit of over-designing going on because you're giving your characters a little bit more, like, design, little bits of, bits and pieces kind of jutting off them in order to break up that silhouette, which allows that character to be pulled out of a crowd. That's what a silhouette test is, right? So, giving her the little horns on the helmet, the little three-point helmet shape, that will open up her silhouette quite a bit more in order to give her more design.
I had a funny horned helmet going on here. And this is another habit of mine. Generally speaking, even when I'm sort of happy with a pose, I do one more pose just in case, just to make sure if there isn't any way I could improve it or make it feel better. And in the end, I think this did feel better. And
which I can kind of agree on. I kind of like this one because, once again, it makes her look more closed off and unsure. However, this one also gives it more of that feminine feel, right? Which isn't a bad thing. Oop, 15 watch streak. Nice job, Mango. Bing bong. it gives them more of a... I looked over right in time for that one. I knew it was coming. But yeah, it gives them more of this feminine feel, which isn't a bad thing. Once again, it's just not what you were going for in the design. You want a female character, sure, or a female presenting character, but you don't want them looking just, you know, like they're girly or something. They're in armor. They got the big pole arm. They have this more, you know, like outward presence. So having the legs kind of like pulled apart a little bit and straight down gives them that more knight feel, I suppose. Your door guy is sure is living the good life, apparently.
Kept it very similar to my original sketch. So as you can see, this is very, very rough, and then I lighten it up and go in with my more detailed sketch. For the face in particular, I actually changed it a little bit from how I usually draw them. I like to draw in a very stylized anime style, but I drew out more of the nose and the lips here, as you can see, because I needed to match the League of Legends or Riot art style, which I don't know if I really got, but that's what I was going for, at least. Here.
Understandable. And yeah, this is something you kind of need to do when you get into more like game design and like professional work sort of thing. You need to try and figure out how to match their art style. It's a little bit of a hard trick for me to do. I haven't really worked on it. Then again, I'm also still kind of discovering my art style. I'm growing. Pikat's still growing too. Every artist is still growing. If you're not growing as an artist, I think you failed.
Here are the horns on the head. Like I mentioned before, I needed this character to feel interesting and unique in a way, and I really exaggerated the proportion of the helmet as well. We need that protagonist energy. I had the same idea when I drew these little ribbons on the shoulders, which you might be thinking, are these ribbons right here just to look cool? And the answer is sort of. Of course it does have to look cool, but they are based on something that exists in real life. I want you to take a look at this. This is a gambeson, which is a padded piece of armor that's often worn underneath the plate mail. And there are strings here that attach the sleeve to the rest of the garment. I just like the idea. Maybe she tied a little bow here for a bit of personality. So the way I drew it, it doesn't exactly work the same way, but this is what I was inspired by.
Which makes sense. You're taking a little bit of like information from actual things that are in, you know, modern, like not modern day, but like actual real life information, and you're editing it ever so slightly so that it looks a little fancy. Plus, once again, we're breaking up that silhouette.
Then when I was drawing the gauntlets over here, I made sure to add some kind of spiky elements to the gauntlets, like this. The reason being that I wanted the character to be from a particular region of League of Legends called Noxus, and
yeah. Oh, interesting. A Noxus type character who... Noxus is all about war, all about fighting, all about, like, combat and all that sort of thing. Having a character who's extremely, like, not sure about herself. Yeah, makes sense. I like it.
The Noxian nation is supposed to be very warlike, and more importantly, they have a very specific shape language that I want to show you. So when I look at a Noxian champion, I notice these
spikes!
Spikes, which are very similar to the spikes I have right over here on the helmet.
Yep.
And also, I guess there are some of these smooth curves here, especially on the axe and the polens, the folds. So I tried to basically roughly replicate these shapes so that the character would feel like they were from the same region. I also ended up...
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Necromancer Kobold. Oh, content. Yeah, content.
flaring out the skirt quite a lot right here. If we look at my original inspiration, which is these kind of characters, definitely the garment is a lot more straight.
I like this guy in the middle. Looks like he's got a bucket on his head. Looks like he went to KFC and then just decided, you know what, screw it. We're just going to put the helmet on.
Down. It doesn't kind of flare out like a skirt or as if the character is wearing a petticoat underneath. Again, same reason as giving them a giant hat with spikes on it. I really wanted the character to look distinctive and interesting. Personally, I really like characters that are inspired by reality, but sometimes we want to add little tweaks just to enhance it a little bit to really give it our own flair, the vibe that we actually want. Now, I also gave her a pair of oversized boots to kind of imply that they didn't belong to her, and she's using a pair of hand-me-downs, and she really does not belong here. I'd say that.
I think you're getting that design pretty well. But right now, remember earlier when I said it's kind of like a fine line when you have your character's head tilted to the side, right? It's kind of a fine line between looking shy and insecure to wistful and, you know, to being like wistful and like distracted. Right now, she's feeling more wistful and distracted than, new and unsure about things. I may not be a fan of League, but I can't argue with its art direction. Oh, agreed. And character design too much. No, you can't. Like, Riot pays big dollars for their art, and I cannot deny, like, they put their money where their mouth is. They do some good fucking work, man. But yeah, back to this, like, right now, she's looking very, like, almost distracted and not... She does look newbie-ish, but more along the lines of, like, a new recruit. She's not ready for the battlefield, just kind of standing there waiting for an order, which isn't a bad thing. I'm just kind of, like, making that little comparison about, like, art direction might be moving a little bit away from where you were wanting, but it still looks good. I'm not going to downplay the look of the design. I'm just giving my own little 2 cents about the direction. I think if you probably had given her a little bit more of like a nervous look, maybe having her side-eyeing the camera a little bit so that she's kind of trying to look like she's not, looking at a random butterfly off in the distance. But either way, there's always room to grow on certain things.
Weapon design is definitely not my forte. I just ended up drawing a bunch of random shapes and sort of hoped for the best. But generally speaking, I'd say...
Oh, bye everybody. Let's see here. Wouldn't a downward head tilt be better for uncertainty? It can be. Once again, it doesn't really matter whether you're tilting your head up or down. Downward does have a little bit more of an uncertain feel to it. Upward gives you more of like a higher, like a more floaty mindset. Because like when you look up, your nose is above everything, meaning that you kind of look almost down on everything. Whereas if you looking down, you're not really like looking upwards. But once again, the face will change how that expression comes off. Right now, because she almost looks bored in the facial construction, she looks like maybe counting clouds currently. If it was downward tilted, the character would be like, oh look, a little bug. Little bug. Yeah, that sort of thing. So looking away from the camera is good. That takes the confidence away from the character, but now the confidence is going towards more ADHD than, being unsure.
That halberds generally curve the other way, but just for fun, I wanted to see if I can make a curve in the opposite
It's League of Legends. The weapons don't need to make any kind of sense. Let's be perfectly honest.
direction, just for interest. I think
Though halberds can be curved the other way too. They can, yes.
it turned out looking pretty cool. So at this point, I've finished my sketch and I'm about to start inking. Notice that my character still doesn't look very detailed. The goal of my sketch is to figure out the overall...
By the way, I'm not an artist myself, but I have consumed an ungodly amount of artist content. Well, welcome in. You're going to like it around here. We're going to be doing a lot of art this week. But that's not a bad thing. That's actually a really good thing. In personal opinion, the person that has the most important opinion in the room is the person with the least amount of experience. Because they're looking at things that everyone has looked at before, but have either put off or given up on. So if you're not an artist yourself, you can look at something, you're a consumer at that point. You're the target audience. So you have a bigger, stronger viewpoint on what looks good and what doesn't than I would as an actual artist. I might be able to make really pretty art, but it matters to you because you're the person that's actually going to be consuming it. Right? So that's why you guys are artist bosses. And artists, they, will draw for people who can't draw. Or draw for people who can draw. But, anyway, neither here nor there.
overall structure, I'm not really worried about patterns or decorations or small details yet. I just want the big forms to make sense and to make it very clear what she's wearing. So she's wearing a coif. If you zoom into the head, you'll see that she's wearing a coif, just like this. You can tell that she's wearing some kind of protective overcoat of some kind, the gambeson, some gloves, some gauntlets, and some boots, and all of that is really clear. And at this point, I'm ready to start going in with my line art, so let's get started. My initial line art process is kind of more of the same idea. Again, I'm not going in with detail just yet. I'm not really adding very many decorations. I just want the major forms to be very, very clear, except a little bit cleaner than just the sketch. I do add...
I really do like the way they're designing the coif. Like, it's so fun. Like, having it come down into like all these little points and look like it has a bunch of ridges. It just looks so fun. I don't know why I'm attached to that detail so much. Maybe it's because it's something I haven't seen too much before. It just looks really nice. Let's see. Good character work can make for awesome art. Getting the vision to help the artist bring it to life can be difficult. Agreed. It really can be. I can't draw at all, but my big sister can draw. Yeah, that's good. And yeah, make sure you're always... I mean, you can draw, and you have a good resource in order to learn how to draw. Your sister. Just, sit down with her and draw. Good way to learn.
A little bit more definition though. So you can see from here that I'm trying to draw a pair of armored gauntlets. They're not just gloves. There's a bit of a plate right here that protects the back of the hand. Something like that. But again, no decorations, no patterns, just construction is what I'm focusing on. Just, I guess, the utility of the outfit. My main focus here really is to clean everything up and make it look presentable. These are going to be the final lines, just simplified. Same thing for the weapon. Initially, I make the terrible mistake of trying to draw the shaft of the weapon freehand, but no.
Yeah, no. And before anyone complains that, hey, you're a digital artist, you have an easy tool to do that. You have an easy tool to do that for traditional art too, right? It's called a ruler. Literally, all digital artists have that normal artists don't have is cheaper tools. Well, a one-time payment tool. Specifically, and you don't destroy the page by erasing too much. That's really the main difference between digital and traditional art in a lot of cases.
Ruler tools exist. Tools exist for a reason. I should have just used it. And that's the line art done. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's kind of plain and doesn't look great. Should we already be adding color? And the answer is yes. I'm going to add color.
No, I agree. It's the only problem is when you add the color and then start getting into your head, this has to be the finished design. A lot of the time you want to add those details in the rendering phase. Because it's, just a lot easier to go over top of your line art and then just keep adding stuff to it.
Right now. Just some flat colors to get a general idea. And yes, I agree, it doesn't look that good right now, but we'll get...
Once again, debatable. But then again, I have a different eye than Pikat does. And I think they're probably pushing their own view and eye onto the audience. Whereas a lot of audience members will probably look at this character and be like, no, I like that.
To that in a second. But oh my gosh, I really was struggling a lot with those colors. I kept changing the color of the coat over and over again.
Color is a bitch sometimes. Get into it and be like, okay, I know exactly what I want for my color. And then you just start getting into it and this doesn't look good at all. It's too dark. It's not saturated. This color's bleeding into that color. It's like, what do I do?
Like this until I was happy, but it was hard. Should this be paler? Should that be darker? I had no idea what I was doing.
Literally every time.
I don't know if you can tell, but nothing really harmonized.
I love that the socks are different heights. And their legs are just chicken legs, just kind of out in the open, even though you're a bit of a knight.
Nothing really seemed to work here. But you can see at this stage is where I start thinking about adding details and patterns. So I was thinking about maybe we add some gold on the helmet and on the gauntlets, maybe a pattern on the gambeson. Personally, I find it much easier to figure out these details when I'm working in color and in shape instead of line art. So that's why my original line art looks pretty plain. But yeah, this process for me is kind of a mess, just a whole bunch of trial and error.
Meanwhile, what I tend to do is I do multiple layers of sketching, go into line art, and then decide, I need to refine that line art, and then I start adding more line art onto it. And then once I have my line art done, I will then start to fill in and then start rendering, if I feel like rendering at all. Oh, tell me about red and blue is fun, but sometimes it clashes. Oh man, it's such a fun combo, but man, is it hard to make work. As a design, it's simple, but the lack of detail always says something about the character. I agree. Look at me. I am literally a blue ball with a face and nubs. That is my whole character design. Yet it says so much about the character, and it's a very simple design. And it works. People seem to really enjoy it. Let's see here. especially for a Noxian color palette. Yeah, like a Noxian color palette, you want to have lots of blacks and reds. They want a warmer color palette while also being dark. They're edgy. They're edgy bitches. And lovely green mouth. Well, yeah, of course. Well, that's part of the face, right?
So at this point, I feel like I have some basic flat colors that kind of work together. I ended up desaturating the colors a whole bunch. And if you don't know what desaturating is, this is a very saturated color like this. So if you put a whole bunch of saturated colors together, green and blue, it looks like a rainbow, which I guess if that's the effect you're going for, that's all right. But generally, all these really bright colors together typically don't look very good together.
Yeah, they kind of hurt the eyes. But here's a fun thing.
A quick way to make your colors feel more harmonious is to really drop the saturation. And now they feel like they kind of almost go together more, right?
A little bit. That's not the best way to look at it. Desaturating color, if you've ever watched Adventure Time, when Marceline eats the color red and turns it gray, or kind of like pulls the red out of the color, that is what desaturating is. You're taking the vibrancy out of that. Just because you take the vibrancy out of it doesn't make, especially specifically, that the colors start working better together. It's just less jarring on the eyes. Like, this is still like a vomit of a bunch of random colors. It doesn't work too terribly well together, but because it's not like bright and vibrant into the eyes, it's not as like jarring or hard to look at. You still only want like a couple colors together.
Like, we can really bring it down, and you can still tell that they're different colors, but they're more harmonious. And if you really want, at this point, go in there with maybe one pop of color, and in comparison, this one will look so much more saturated. So that's what I went for basically in my drawing. I kept a little pop of saturation for these little ribbons, and everything else was more or less different shades of gray. And like I said, since I am happy with the colors now, it's a great time to go in and try to figure out what kind of patterns I want to draw. So
a little bit of audio issues throughout the video, but it's not a big deal. Like, there was a bit of a, I think they accidentally bumped their mic earlier there, and then the volume just kind of like jumped straight up. That's fine. It's fine. It's not like I'm any better about that. I punched my mic a couple times.
This is just, again, more experimenting. Just figuring out what looks good. I think it's worth talking about the mindset I had while I was designing these patterns. So one thing I like to do is I like to make a new layer with the outline layer style on, and that lets me kind of draw line art really quickly. So I'm adding some geometry, I suppose, to this helmet really quick. I can add these sort of rivet looking things. I can add a golden rim on the hat. I can do it really, really quickly with this outline layer style. I'll show you where it is on Clip Studio Paint. So on Clip Studio Paint, if you want to add an outline layer style, I'll just use red as usual. Actually, we'll use gray. I'll just use gray for this. You come over here, and then you press this button. Then the lines you...
I don't know if they meant to miss that, but... You know what? I think they missed putting that onto their video. So I'll show you really quick. All right, here's the thing. Okay, let me just hide your attack for a moment. So up in the top left here, we have something called layer properties. You'll want to open up your layer properties. If you don't know where it is, it's just open up your the window tab here and scroll down and just look for layer properties in there, okay? You go to layer properties, and then there's this little button here. It says border effect. You click on that. You can change the border color to any color you want. I usually just switch it straight to black. And that will put an outline around everything. It's not the best, mind you. It is like, you don't want to be doing that with a finished product, because if you're doing very sketchy stuff right now, you're going to get this big mess. But if you got more of like a finalized design, it definitely works a lot better. And once again, you're going to want to do your actual line art with actual line art, not with the outline tool.
Draw will have an outline, and you can adjust the thickness and the color of this, but it generally makes it very easy for you to experiment and iterate with other shapes on, and make things look more complex. And you'll see that I'll be using this a lot in this drawing. I find just kind of painting color in is a quicker way to iterate on my character designs. So I think it might be worth talking about what I'm thinking while I'm going through this process. It's very rough right now. Like, where do I know where to add detail? How do I know what's the philosophy I use? And generally speaking, I like to make sure that, first of all, we maintain some decent areas of rest. If you add detail to every single inch of the character. It's gonna look noisy. It's gonna look hard to see. There won't be anywhere for your eyes to linger because there are no areas of rest. And that's not very clear, is it? But I like to work very loosely and roughly at first to get a general idea and get in there afterwards and clean it up. So you can see me kind of cleaning up the shapes of the helmets, making them look consistent, adding some lines if I need to. And already things are looking a little bit more detailed.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Sorry, I paused a little too early there. I knew what they were about to say. And sorry, finger twitched. Anyway, but yeah, no, like already we're starting to get like all these little bits of rivets. We're getting a bunch of like, kind of like how in a gambeson you see how there's a stitch line going down the gambeson in order to, you know, kind of give that puffy feel. Because once again, it's supposed to absorb impact. We're getting a little bit more detailing in the gauntlets to make them look like they're actually like metal worked. Getting little teeth almost sort of things, like metal bits that are holding the dress bits down, or the coiffed downwards, putting a little outline around the coiffed. Sorry, coiffed is such a fun word. And once again, adding like rivets and edging and just things that probably don't make a whole hell of a lot of sense to be putting onto that bit, but because it's like a visual interest, breaking up the silhouette, making things a little bit more detailed. But once again, you don't want to go too hard, otherwise you're just going to have a big mess of chaos that just feels overjarring, overdone, overworked, which I have been known to do quite a bit in the past. I need to rework a couple things because I'm not overly happy with some of my previous works because of that fact. But either way, an issue is having fighting with a decade or more is not over designing characters. I think having something you've been having a problem with is not going far enough with the design. Yeah, that's that is a thing that's a little difficult. It's something I even struggle with quite a bit, is over designing, because once again, I keep on looking at a character, I'm like, that's far enough. We don't need to push it any further than that, but it's like, I'm still kind of sitting way back. An issue you've been fighting with. Yeah. That's fine. It's a hard issue to fight against. Something you can work on, but it's hard. It's hard. But visual exercises will always help.
I want them to look. Even though we started from a very basic and simple line art. I also added these stripes down the gambeson. Again, inspired by reality. I was inspired by the sort of quilted padding lines down the gambeson. This is kind of a bad quality image, but hopefully like these, basically. Like these. Yeah, basically like that. That's what I was going for. Although, in hindsight, I'm not sure if these lines were a good idea. I was talking about areas of rest, but adding a whole bunch of lines everywhere means that there aren't really very many areas of rest. Ugh, it's easy to
Well, because you've made them like such a muted color, I feel like they work as a bit of an area of rest for the design. Only because, once again, they're not distracting. They're not pulling too much at your attention. You probably could have made them a little lighter on the design, kind of like that first picture of the gambeson that you saw, where the lines are barely visible, because that's what they are. They're stitching, right? But the way that you have it designed, lines are a good way in order to drag the eye and the attention into specific directions. Usually it drags the eye downward, but it can help, like if all of your elements are like building upwards, they can at least bring your attention upwards towards the face, which is kind of the end goal. You want the face to be the focal. Face isn't really much of a focal point in this picture. The glasses help, not a lot.
Say this from hindsight, but at the time I was very excited about them. So this is just a process of gradually adding detail and then cleaning it up and trying again, and if they don't work, erase them and try again. Working on multiple layers like this makes things pretty easy, at least for me, relatively. I find that
understandable. Layers are another thing we kind of have over traditional art. I did forget to mention that, but we do have layers, which you can kind of mimic a little bit, but it's a lot of extra work for very little payoff. But recently I've been improving on Mary Kondo and character designs. I think nice.
Easier than trying to work with line art and then sketching and erasing and resketching. I really spend some time adding some more spikes onto the gauntlets because remember, we need this character to feel like they're from Noxus. We add some Noxian spikes. Something I find kind of fun to do.
The Noxian spikes.
while I'm in the process of drawing is to sometimes toggle the extra decorations layer on and off to see exactly how
smart.
different it looks from the original version. So let's take a look. Here it is off, and here it is on. Off and on. On. Pretty big difference, which is why I'm not afraid of starting very simple. Because I know I can always get in there and add as much detail as I feel like the character design needs. You'll notice that I actually drew the weapon on a separate layer because I figured it'd be easier to handle that way. But
yeah, that would make things a lot easier. Be able to add a lot of detail and, you know, focus fire on the actual character design before you start focusing fire. Because like, when you're making these types of characters, your weapon, like a weapon on these types of characters, is almost as like important as the character themselves. They almost have their own like characteristics and like feel and like emotion and all that just on themselves sometimes. That's why it's almost a whole different skill to be a weapons artist. Hello, I thought I was on a Pikat stream for a second. Oh, fair enough. Yeah, no, that's what happens when we do React content.
essentially, I give it the same treatment as the rest of the character. I fill it in quickly, add some flat colors, decide I don't like the ribbon because there's too many ribbons. Again, make a new layer with an outline, layer style.
False. You can never have too many ribbons. Ribbons are fantastic. More ribbons. More!
And just kind of go to town. Like, I'm like, all right, what kind of gold decorations do we need here? Exactly the same process. Yeah, you can see here what I mean by experimenting. I was trying a bunch of different shapes there, but like, yeah, but the diamond, who knows? Oh, okay, yeah, I guess I like the diamond. The diamond's cool. We went with that. And when I'm done with the weapon, I come in here to
Okay, I'm glad you did put a little bit of the red ribbons onto the weapon, because once again, that ties the weapon into you. You didn't just kind of like, you're not just taking another asset altogether and just slapping onto the character. You share a design with the actual weapon, which is nice. You kind of want to have like through lines between all of your elements of your character.
erase the parts of her hand that cover the weapon so she looks like she's actually holding it, rather than having the weapon floating above her. I think it's worth noting that I don't just use an eraser there, because if I erase something here and I decide, oh, I actually want to have it back, I change my mind, I don't actually want to erase that after all, well, there's nothing I can do about it unless I want to undo all of my previous work, okay? So what I like to do instead is I come here and do a layer mask. Just mask selection, and if you select the mask over here and you erase it, it acts in much the same way. You can have a soft eraser, it doesn't matter. But if you just toggle it off, everything is back. If you delete the mask, you don't lose any of your work. So I love using a mask for this sort of thing. And
That's fair. That's an understandable way of doing that. If I'm doing any of those, like, if I've worked on a big part of the of a design myself and I'm not 100% sure I'm wanting to go fully with that direction, I will, and I want to erase a bunch of detail, but I'm like, I don't want to lose that information. I will make a duplicate of the layer, hide one of them, and then start doing all my adding and subtracting of detail after that. That way, I still have my previous design to fall back on, but I can then start working on this current design in order to push it forward, in order to, you know, really work towards getting a proper design going again. And if I don't like the direction I'm going, I can just be like, never mind, delete, and then bring back the old one. Or hide and bring back the old one, work on something else, make another copy altogether, whatever. I think using the masks in this way is giving yourself too much of a fail-safe. Too much like too much of a way to just kind of like pretend there's no give yourself too much of like, how do I explain this properly? Give yourself too much of a safety net. If there's no risk in the design, then you're going to have a harder time finding that reward because you're not having to really fight against something. Oh, thank you for the hydrate. But that's also just me. That's a lot like the old masters and everything like that, saying like, never erase, live with your mistakes and everything, and blah blah blah. And it's like, no, fuck you. I want to erase if I want to erase. If you don't want to erase, that's on you. That's perfectly fine. So I don't know. It's a personal thing. I don't know if I'll try this one. Seems like an extra step I don't really want to mess around with. But it's a good idea. It's not a bad idea.
Final result looks like this, which I think is kind of cute, actually. I feel like I fulfilled my initial requirement of creating a character that looks a little timid, doesn't really know what they're doing, and is definitely out of their depth.
So once again, after everything, like, she does look a little less timid than I would kind of like. I think it all straight up comes down to the mouth. The mouth has just the ever so slight upward turn right here. You see that little upward turn? Just because of that, it takes her from being timid and unsure to being just wistful and distracted. It's so amazing, like, how such little changes are enough to make an entire switch in the entire mood of a picture. Oh, and a stretch. You got it. Let's see here. Make a character that fights with ribbons. You can wear as many as you can. Yep, true. In stage, I can really see what you talked about in reference to character posing. Yeah, no, for sure. Living and learning from mistakes are very different things. True. Living and learning, yeah. If you didn't live from the mistake, you're definitely not learning anything. If you're learning from the mistake, well, at least you lived through it. I smell that upward turn, and it changes everything. Yeah. I think you mean see that upward turn, but it's also Vorpal, so yeah, you know what. I'm not surprised. Oops.
However, there is a pretty major problem with this character, which is that, well, remember how I said that this character needs to belong to Noxus, a specific region of the League of Legends universe. For reference, I used Darius right here. We got the spikes, we got the curves, but here is the problem. Darius was released in 2012. That means Darius is over 10 years old, and in fact, Darius is an entire teenager. And modern Noxian champions don't actually follow the same shape language. They've since been updated.
They still do carry a lot of the same shape language. However, you're right. They're definitely a little bit more different than they used to be. In my idea, timidity is usually posed by drawing all extremities towards the center of mass and drawing the lips inwards. Little bit. There's a little bit more to it than that. Once again, there's a lot of different directions that you can have. Like, right now, these characters are following that same direction that I was saying, like looking away from the camera, having like a downturned face, but they exude confidence. And a lot of that reason is because their chests are open and their brows are furrowed. That's really all the difference. If you had taken their eyebrows and just shifted them upwards, brought her arm inwards a little bit, all of a sudden she's no longer looking timid. Or she's no longer looking like experienced and ready for a fight. She's looking timid and unsure.
Look at some of the newer Noxian champions, they look like this instead. And you'll notice that the shape language is actually different and looks better, I think. If we look over here at Ambessa, there's a lot more straight lines, none of those curves. We have facets that are almost crystalline in nature, a lot of triangles, a lot of spiky triangles and stuff. A lot of triangles, and I feel like that's what I need to bring into my character. So I think, well, character design is all about iteration, so I'm gonna do a second pass, and hopefully this is gonna look more Noxian.
Do as the Winter Soldier does, and do it again!
That was my main goal for my second pass. Although, before we get there is another problem I had to solve, which is that I wanted to change the pose. So I definitely had a plan with this pose, which is that I liked how she looked kind of timid by clutching the spear to her chest. But I think between this original thumbnail sketch and the actual kind of concept art I ended up with, I didn't really capture the timidity that I wanted. In fact, I'd say it looks kind of symmetrical, kind of stiff. I wasn't really feeling the weight of the halberd. I wanted a really big weapon, so let's start again with the pose.
Yeah, I can agree on all that.
Initially, I had this idea where she was kind of balancing this giant halberd on her shoulder because she wasn't quite strong enough to lift the entire thing. So I have her leaning really far back to make sure that the head of the weapon is balanced. And once again, as usual,
Which, once again, it works, but it's giving you more of like the princess who decided to pull up a big weapon sort of idea, right? You're in over your head, but this character right here is currently holding a lot of confidence in themselves, and that's that upward turn on the face.
Am never happy with my first attempt, so here we go again, except I try to push it even further. Typically, that's what I do for my second pass. Even though I'm happy with that drawing on the left for the most part, sometimes I wonder, like, okay, if I make it really extreme, if I take it even further, can I make it better? So I was like, here's my second pass, and it looked exactly the same as the first one, so I guess there wasn't really that much I could improve on it.
Actually, no, you actually improved on it because, once again, you pulled that face down slightly. Just ever so slightly. And that was all you needed in order for her to stop looking upwards and down at you, and more, she's looking down and up at you, while still, with the head back.
Now, I don't think this is a perfect pose by any means. I go in there with a more detailed sketch. You can see from the way her...
And instantly like that. Oh, Necromancer Cobalt, thank you so much for the subscription. Love that. Love that. Welcome, welcome. Much appreciated. Yeah. Welcome to the family. But yeah, and once again, right now, this is the most timid she's looked so far, and it's looking way better. And you haven't even done all that much just yet.
Her face looks, but even though I think I can feel the weight of the spear a lot better in this pose, because she is kind of looking down on you like this, there isn't that same sense of being nervous or timid like the
Taxi T123, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome, welcome.
The previous pose had. However, it's a more interesting and appealing pose, so I think that's a worthwhile trade-off. Same process as before, we're keeping things very simple in the sketch phase, just getting the loose shapes in, the loose construction and forms in. Except this time, instead of a half-moon shape, I go for more aggressive, sharp, straight, Noxian shapes if possible. I also exaggerated the size of the weapon and made it much larger, just to make the character feel smaller in comparison. Alright.
The bags, brows, and mouth show everything, and it's one hell of a difference, right? Like, literally, that's how art is so interesting to me. All you need to do is just change one set of lines, and it changes the entire mood of a character. Let's finish off drawing the face here.
Inking time. I'm doing the exact same thing as last time.
Okay, so once again, we're at this point here. I'm going to back up just a touch. There we go. If we had taken just the eyebrows and flipped them upside down, that would make her look pissed. Just absolutely upset with everything, instead of just like nervous and concerned. But because the eyebrows are furled upwards, she's got the half-lidded eyes, the mouth is puckered up, almost ready, like they almost want to cry at the moment. It fits so much more the direction that they were going for originally.
Last time. Especially when I'm drawing the gauntlet, I think you can see this time I'm using much more of those straight triangular shapes that I see in modern Noxian champions. And I also give her Gambeson the same spiky treatment. Now, the weapon was something I really struggled with. I went back to the moon shape, and then I drew some triangles, some random diamonds, then I decided the diamonds look bad, so I draw some more triangles. But, like, it looks kind of goofy, right? Doesn't really feel like a proper weapon here. Fantasy weapons have always been kind of weird to me, because it feels like most of what you're adding is fantasy flourishes that don't really add anything. They just mostly have to look cool, and that's just not really my strength.
Yeah, I agree. I'm the exact same way. I think what you're doing here that's probably like giving you the hardest problem is you're doing the same thing, the very thing that you said you didn't want to do at the beginning of the stream, or at the beginning of the video, where you didn't want to put a lot of detail into the line work. You do that afterwards with your with like all of your like building pieces, right? So because you're now trying to add so much detail in at this stage, it's starting to get lost a little bit. So if you had like pulled a lot of that detail back, just drew the halberd and the basic shape of it, and then added this diamond shape on top, added these layers of spikes on top, I think you probably would have been able to get a bit of a better design direction going for that.
This just doesn't look good to me. What if I make it bigger? Then I redraw the whole thing yet again. And now we're at this great point where this guy looks a little bit like, for some reason, now it just looks like Mega Star Me for whatever reason. Like, don't you
I can see it. It's Mega Starmie doing the just do it pose.
Think it looks like Mega Starmie? Yeah, I drew Mega Starmie by accident.
Whoopsies.
Fantastic. Moving on. You might notice that I also ended up smoothing the boots a little bit. In my original design, I had these oversized boots, but I feel like they kind of interrupted the silhouette a little bit. There was kind of a lot of things sticking out, a lot of stuff going on, and I wanted to simplify at least the bottom portion of the character a little bit to draw the eye to what I think mattered, which is, I guess, the upper torso and the weapon. So I ended up getting rid of these, or at least making them less sticky outy.
Aw, I really like the boots because the big poofed out boots make them once again kind of have that feel of they're in over their head situation, right? The way the eyes are done, it makes her look like she has bags with the upturned eyebrows and pursed lips. If she's wear yourself to sleep one too many nights, yeah, I agree. Also Mega Starmie Valbird for the win. Yes! Honestly, we actually still have that design rape with this one, if you think about it.
Sticky outy, is that a word? It's not, but you understand. I think when I worked on the liner here overall, it's quite a bit more detailed than my first attempt because this was my second pass at the character. I already roughly had an idea of what I wanted, so...
Now, one thing I'm going to say on this one, I'm sorry, I'm pausing so much. We have taken this 23-minute video, and right now my recording's already up to an hour. My bad. How am I going to get through 7 of these? But one of the big things that I'm worried about is right now, it looks like they've leveled up a bunch. Like, they're no longer timid because of underconfidence. They're timid just for the sake of being timid, if that makes sense. Their armor all fits them properly. Everything's like nice and like well fitted. They look more noble than anything. They're no longer like that beginning adventurer who is just kind of like stumbling into glory sort of idea. They look like they're not ready for glory, and they're going to stumble into that, but they are a little bit more like geared up for that, which I don't know if I'm explaining exactly the direction I'm going for this one. I think they're definitely just tired.
So it was easier to decide in advance, like, oh, well, I clearly want a shape like this on the gambeson. Or for instance, I wanted the boots to look a certain way, and here I am drawing the weapon again. One thing I like to do is, if there's something I want to work on later on, I like to just leave some notes for myself so I don't forget, because I'm very forgetful. Yeah, and here I just thought that, like, the Mega Starmie shape was just not working out for me, so I tried something a little bit different. And in the end, I went for, like, a basic axe shape like this, which I suppose is less unique or interesting than the weird star shape I was going for. But hey, I think that uniqueness is overrated. I feel like this basic shape communicates the idea of a weapon significantly better than one that looks like a Pokemon. So it's not always about originality, sometimes it's more about execution. Same as before, when I'm done with the liner, I go in there and start adding color. Fortunately, this time trying to figure out the colors took out less time because, again, this is my second iteration. As much as I would love being able to design a perfect character the first time around, for me, that rarely happens.
Who the hell can? Seriously, who the hell can?
I need multiple attempts. I need to redraw and redraw until I land somewhere that isn't perfect, because there's no such thing as a perfect character design, but something that I'm reasonably happy with. And then here I go again with the line layer style.
Agreed, and people really need to start thinking about that. Perfect designs don't happen anymore. They just don't. You can't have a perfect design, because that would mean that the character is going to be accepted by literally everyone who looks at them. Like, I've already like torn this picture apart. It's a very good character. I love this character. I can easily see them in League of Legends. I can see them in their own video game. I can see them in Final Fantasy. Is anybody going to feel that way? Pikat isn't. They don't actually think that, because once again, they've also torn this character apart multiple times and probably will tear it apart multiple times again. Other people in the audience will probably think, no, this character doesn't look like they're part of Noxus. There's not enough design elements for Noxus. Like, you need a bit more like reds. You need more like spikes going, or you need to have like more metal, more silks, that sort of thing, more furs. There's no furs on this character, and you're from Noxus. What the hell's going on here? But that's the thing about art. You can't be perfect. All you can do is be as good as you possibly can for what you want. and just hope you find that audience that will resonate with it.
This time I think adding some tassets might be fun. Previously on this character, I decided the waist area looked a little bit plain, so I added this little ribbon right over here, which is fine. But I think oftentimes adding something that gives utility, that feels like it could be used for something, like for instance just a piece of armor, is oftentimes more interesting. So instead of just adding a ribbon this time, I drew in some tassets. And if you didn't know, tassets are these often layered pieces of armor meant to protect the thighs, so yeah.
That's what those are called. Not as fun as coif.
Yeah, why not give her some of those? You'll often see them over gambesons just like this. However, I did like the idea of there being a little pop of red here, so I brought that back into the tassets.
Okay.
And in fact, I think I did a better job here, because if you look back at this drawing...
We upturned that smirk just a little bit, and see how much that changed the personality? See how much that changed it? They're once again looking up, like... There's a good bit of hint of confidence, and because now the armor is looking a lot more finished, the previous iteration looked like the character you would see entering the tavern on the first stage of D&D. This character looks like they just hit level 10 and they're still trying to fit in their skin. So that's where the differences kind of like sit, right? Little changes can make a huge difference.
These kind of sections of red look pretty much the same size, and if you know anything about designing anything, there's the concept of big, medium, small, which is that you want to vary up your shapes a little bit. And I did it a little bit here because these chunks are bigger than these chunks over here. Like,
in fairness, League has such a breadth of character designs, even characters within the same region can look vastly different. Oh, true. They do still carry like certain design elements from one to the other. Like Darius, even though he was made over a dozen years ago, still carries the reds and blacks, still carries like the spiky geometry, still carries like this air of like military in them, versus Ambessa, who is all of that but sleeker, sharper, and just kind of like a different character. You can tell they're from Noxus just by looking at them. This character, if you tell me they're from League of Legends, I'd probably say, okay, they could either be from Noxus, but I could almost see them being from a multitude of other characters, like Ionia. I could almost see them from Ionia. A little spiky, sure, but definitely Ionian in nature. Could easily see them fitting into Demacia a bit, too. And I think that's just because, like, there's not enough red, I guess. We lean too much on that gray element.
these sections of red, for instance, are bigger than this little one over here, but I think I can do better. So I drew these tiny little ribbons here on the bottom of the tassels, and I think that works out better. Now, as much as I love adding cat ears to helmets, I figured that it didn't feel very Noxian to me. So I stuck with the very Noxian feeling spike down the middle instead. Now, instead of adding random stripes to the cloth, I decided to give it a more interesting texture, just like the modern Noxian champions. Mel has some kind of interesting woven effect on the cloth here, so I wanted to try to do the same thing. I tried to...
Which kind of gives you that lack of rest again, but it's a little... But once again, because it's matching the colors so much, like the colors are extremely, like, similar to each other, right? Because of that, that design is still going to be giving you a section of rest. It's giving you a nice large chunk of area here. Granted, a lot of that area is going to be covered up by the tassets, but it's giving you that large chunk of area that is designed, but not overly designed. Almost could be Vestayan in hiding. Yeah, almost. Yeah. But unfortunately, we took away the cat ears, so definitely can't do that.
Make sure to keep these lines on the gambeson not too dark, because I didn't want it to feel too contrasty, because that might make the overall piece feel, the overall design rather, feel a little bit too noisy. I still wanted the major areas of the gambeson to act like an area of rest, so some subtle patterns I think is more than enough. Okay, so another thing I wanted to do here is, if you look at the coif right here, so over here, I used some leather strips right here, just to simulate some neck protection. Again, looking at our references, we do have these potentially cloth, perhaps leather cuffs, designed to protect the side of the head and the neck. But more often than not, it seems that oftentimes they're made out of chainmail. Now, I can't directly use a chainmail texture on a stylized character design like this. So what I ended up doing was turning them into these sort of arrow shapes, because I felt, again, arrow shapes were very Noxian. Like this, and sort of link them together in strands where it might feel like a chain, a stylized chain, but just like do that a lot. So that's what I ended up doing. This part ended up actually taking a long time, but I don't know, League of Legends Champions.
I can see that. I definitely see that. But hey, it looks good.
Are more detailed than you might expect. So here I am just carefully drawing each individual shape. Now that I think about it, there probably had to be a better way of approaching this, but like, you know, I'm not smart.
Making a brush would probably be your easiest way, but the way you did it makes it look the best, I think. Like, it looks good like this. I'd be curious about how she would go about making a Yordle. That'd be fun. Yordles are interesting characters.
Alright, so here we are. So one thing I did think about adding is some chips and dents to the armor, because I wanted the character to feel like they were super hardworking. So perhaps her armor was really well used, but the problem with that concept was that if her armor was well worn and dented, it implied that she had seen a lot of combat and had therefore survived a lot of combat, which would turn her into a veteran, which maybe doesn't really match with the concept that she is an inexperienced character.
I'm glad you caught that before you went and did it. However, if you had stuck with the baggier armors and the baggier boots and all that sort of thing, they would fit, because then it would look like everything is hand-me-downs. Right?
But one place that I thought I might be able to put that is right here on the weapon, because perhaps she used this weapon in training a lot, not to hit actual enemies, but training dummies a lot. I think that's a really fun and
once again, the weapon is heavy. The weapon is heavy. Did this character get that weapon from, like, all this training? Or is this a hand-me-down? Something that they got from their parent, their brother, their cousin, something like that, that they now are using in order to... Are they Mulaning it? Are they Mulaning this shit, is basically what I'm saying.
cool thing about character design and concept art in general. Just small details like this can hopefully help tell the story. Okay, looks like it's time to add some Noxian detail to this halberd. So a lot of straight lines and a lot of triangles is what I'm going for. More triangles, more spikes, more triangles, more triangles, more spikes, more triangles, more spikes. Something like this. I don't know, does it make sense for a weapon to be that complicated? Yeah.
Absolutely not. But once again, high fantasy doesn't care.
I don't know, man. I mean, it's League of Legends. Does it matter if it... Yeah, I mean, that doesn't need to be this complicated, but it looks cool this way, so hell yeah. Let's make it more complicated. Then when I'm done with the weapon, same thing as before, erase out the parts with a mask, where the hand would be covering the shaft, and that way it feels like the character is holding the weapon. I didn't really have time to add shading here, but I find that it really helps to add small occlusion shadows, like really tiny dark shadows like this, where you might have small crevices, and that does a lot in helping the character feel more dimensional and alive, I guess. Like this. And more importantly, that doesn't take a whole lot of time. And this is how my character looks. Afterward.
So, at the end of the day, character definitely looks like they're part of League of Legends. Polly, what are you doing there? Hi, Polly, how you doing? But yes, character definitely feels like they're in League of Legends. However, I'm not seeing this timid feel to this character. A little bit, just a little bit. But because the eyebrows are missing, we have that little upturn in the mouth. All the armor, it looks kind of new and well fitted. The weapon is a little chipped up, but once again, that just kind of says, did you just get this and all that? Right now, how I'm reading this character, and that's putting everything else to the side, my first initial impressions of this character would be noble kid given a weapon by their by a predecessor, or took this weapon and now wants to go onto the battlefield. So they got tailor-made armor, they got everything pretty much given to them on a silver spoon. They look a little bit like a princess sort of character, and they're ready to fight, and they're looking a little hoity-toity about it, which is very far removed from the timid, meek character that we were originally planning. Like, once again, The weapon, I think, probably would have been better if we had it on the other side of the head. Because right now this almost feels like they're holding it confidently at the same time. That weight is no longer kind of really there. It is, but it's not. There is zero timid in this posture and expression. Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm seeing too. It's hard to convey a design of uniform that was field stripped from a dead soldier and repurposed to a recruit. Yes, that's not what I'm getting from this character. Her head is back, chin up, shoulders high, hefting the weapon. Yeah. If she was more leaning on the weapon, and once again, we bring those features downwards a little bit into more of like a sad look, have them looking away from the camera instead of towards the camera in this situation, and made the clothing look like it doesn't properly fit them. Bring back the boots, bring back them baggy boots. I think we probably would have gotten a lot more of that timid feel. But this is a very good character design. It's a very fun character design. I love this. The art is very well done. Pikat, you did a fantastic job with this character. I think we just lost a little bit of the character design that we were wanting to go for. That's all. That's my personal opinion. I am not a professional designer or anything like that. This is just me as an outside observer.
I actually did a separate color variation where I made her coat a lot darker, and I think I like it a lot more, but I don't know. You can tell.
And actually, look at this. This one right here shows everything that we were just talking about wanting way more than this design right here. This is a good way to show the character, but we're not getting that timid feel.
Tell me what you think, okay? And that's how I go from something simple like this to something like this. I hope that was interesting, and thank you so much for watching, and maybe I'll catch you next time.
It was extremely interesting. We're going to watch more Pikat. I probably sounded very negative on this one, but this is just me giving my opinions on everything and all that. Oh, you want the link for the video? You got it. Copy video URL. Make sure you go and check out Pikat. Pikat's fantastic. Great artist, great designer. I've learned quite a bit of things from them. But you can always learn other lessons by watching videos. You can always look at things with a little bit more scrutiny sometimes. Don't tear it apart for the sake of tearing it apart. Just learn from it. And then you can start figuring out how to do things better for yourself. But yeah. What? Hey, did you enjoy that? Was it funny? Well, come and check it out live over on twitch.tv/freeform_art. Make sure you put the _art. We have lots of fun there. We enjoy ourselves, and we want to see you over there. So come on and hang out. See you in a bit.